Now, Water and Sanitation Minister Senzo Mchunu has directed water services employees, including Rand Water, to execute water shifting in Gauteng. This follows Mchunu's recent discussion with community members in Gauteng amid an ongoing water crisis. To discuss this further, I am joined by the CEO of the South African Water Chamber, that's Benoit Le Roy. Thank you very much for your time, Benoit, here on eNCA. Just first of all, please help us understand, what is water shifting?
I must say it's ingenious. It's load shedding. It's water shedding. Just with the new word, but it's really moving water around as we do in our dams. So the integrated Vaal River system has 14 dams from KZN below the Drakensberg through into Lesotho, the Vaal, right down to Bloemhof. And we move that water around depending on where's the best to have it available for the users, where the majority of users are not cities. 63%, 62% is actually agriculture. So those are the major users. And we move some of the water uphill into Mpumalanga to the power stations that need the cooling water. So what we're trying to do here, I think, is quite ingenious. Look, we're in a mess, so we're not going to argue, what's the cause of the mess necessarily. Water to go around in the system. There's enough water in the dams, but we know the system is broken. And the only way then is to share it, because the system's designed to stay wet. It's not designed to run dry. So what we need to do is not only try and make it equitable, but it's to try and keep the system wet, because when it goes dry, we get water hammer when we refill it. And then the pipes, more than 50% of them are past their useful life. What happens, we burst them and we make the problem worse. So I think it's quite an ingenious idea in trying to keep the system alive. What it does do is brings everybody down to the lowest common denominator, which we don't like. But it's actually quite important that we keep the system wet. So I think it's ingenious.
What about the technology? Do we have the type of technology that will make sure that it's at least transparent?
Well, you see, now this is the real conundrum. There's this trust deficit we saw during the COVID pandemic, and we see it globally. And yes, there is technology. What we need to do is to expedite the digitization and digitalization. They're two different things of water systems, and we call them smart cities, where water is part of it. And when we're able to do that, we can have something like the Eskom app, where we're able to plan around when the water is going to be available, when it's going to not be available, or when it's going to be at a reduced level. Then people can plan their lives accordingly. To do that, we have to develop a digital twin. And that is far more complex than electricity. So, but the cities are looking at this. We just need to expedite it. So the technology is there. And then I think we can do two things. One is we can manage the system better with digital and artificial intelligence. And secondly is we can then share that information amongst society, politicians, service providers, investors, and everybody, and rebuild that trust and have that transparency so that we can see what's actually happening. And this is a global trend. The water sector is behind the rest of other sectors. Energy is very digital. Water isn't. But the technology is here. And it's just that South Africa has just been hesitating the last couple of years to embark on that. But I believe, never let a good crisis go to waste. And this crisis is actually going to catalyze the digitization of our water architecture, especially in our towns.
If you had to tell us the truth, how far are we from a complete crisis where, if for instance, the technology is ignored and other factors are ignored, how far are we to finding ourselves having absolutely no water, even in the most affluent areas?
With water, it's a very difficult thing to actually guesstimate. With energy, electrons are on and off. They flow or they don't flow. Water takes, it's not a cable, it's a pipe. The pipes are under various pressures, and those pressures vary, and that's why the leaking happens. And the older they are, the more they leak. They never seal 100% in municipal infrastructure. So we predicted this we said it would take 2 decades for the system to collapse in 2002. So I was with an EPC business at the time. We closed it because government decided not to invest anymore. Water was for free. There was a free water policy that was put on the table. That was the beginning of the end. And we've lasted past 2022. We're in 2023. So I think our systems were extremely well over-designed, but I think we're on the last leg. So we have to depressurize the system. We have to rejuvenate the assets in a very targeted way because there isn't enough money, and we've seen all infrastructure spending being halted by government. So we need private sector input into that, and there's a lot of governance issues that have to be put onto the table to make that happen. I don't think we have 5 years, and to be honest, one has to fix 20% to get an 80% impact, and it's the big lines. So we're going to have a lot more outages where we're going to see millions of people within Gauteng, as we've been seeing, where water's out for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, so that the bulk service providers like Rand Water, Joburg Water, Chwane can get their bulk lines reinstated. And we don't have redundancy like we have in electricity. Yeah. So Rand Water's busy doing that, but that's expensive to do that redundancy. So we're going to see a lot more outages, planned and unplanned. So you can see it's going to be exactly like Eskom, but we have to, hopefully we've learned our lesson with Eskom, and we don't let this slip through our fingers. But I think all decks are on hand, and I think the minister being involved has shown that it is an absolute post-crisis. It's a catastrophe, and we do have the tools, and we do have the means to mitigate it. But society needs to also, I think, come to the table and become a lot more aware. I don't think society is the problem. Society is using less than 10% of the water if you do the calculations with the leakage and all that. So I don't think the problem lies there, but society needs to be active.
And that's what I was going to ask you, because I mean, because I mean, for me, I know that statistics show that most of it is actually wasted water from leaking. You know, I can even give you one example. Every second week or so, I drive down Jan Smuts Avenue, and around Craig Hall, just before you turn onto Conrad Drive, there's always a burst pipe there all the time.
Yes, you know, in the old days we would have called these springs, spring water coming out of the mountains. But yes, we have these artificial springs. So if you just look at agriculture uses in round number 60% of the water in South Africa, just under 30%, is 28% is the urban, so the towns and cities, which includes commercial, government and industry. So if you have a look at, and if you discount that by 30 to 40% for the non-residential users, and then if you take only 40% gets to the residents because 60% is lost in leaks, theft and the like, mostly is leaks, you'll get a number that's about 7 to 8% is what households are using. So households are not the issue. Okay. So stopping filling up pools and watering gardens and all that is not the issue at all. It's a 1 in 10 thing. The big issue is, in actual fact, the biggest user after agriculture are actually artificial springs that are fostered by local government, who has left these assets for 30 years to run themselves to where they are now. And we've got competing priorities. We're not a rich country, but we're going to have to shift now. Now, do we take away from safety and security, from health, or from grants? Where do we take the money to put into, into the water systems? And don't forget, all our sewage works are not working. 97% are not working, which means we're polluting that water reserve, which means the dams can be full, but if they're full of pollution, we don't have available water. So we do have this crisis. It's a slow onset, unfortunately, and it's not like a light switch on and off. So it's quite difficult. It's complex, but we do have the wherewithal to put it right. We just have to start doing it. But I think raising awareness, through the media, through the ministerial initiatives, and then digitizing all of this is going to help everybody to play the game together and to be able to plan their lives, accordingly.
Yeah, thank you so much for speaking to us here on eNCA and for your insights. That was the CEO of the South African Water Chamber, Benoit Le Roy.